Here's another video with some chord changing tips. And again, these are primarily for beginning guitar players, but even if you don't think of yourself as a beginner, you might find some useful stuff here if you are struggling with getting your chord changes together smoothly when you're moving back and forth through the chords in a pattern in a song. So we're going to take a couple of examples here. We're going to start off with the A chord. Okay. Now when I start working with a beginning guitar student, the first chords I teach them are always the 5 basic major chords, the open position chords, which are E, A, we're going to come back to that and talk a lot about it, the D chord, the G chord, which you need to learn with both of the common fingerings, 2, 1, 3, and then 3, 1, 4, sorry, 3, 2, 4. Like that. You got to have both of those together because you're going to need them both. And then finally the C chord. Now, don't get in the habit of hanging your thumb up over the neck unless you actually need it. And the only reason you need it when you're playing a chord is to be able to mute string 6, in this case, as a bass note. If you're finger picking or doing broken chord picking, then you don't really have to worry too much about that low E string. It's not going to, come into play. If you're strumming, though, there's no way you're going to avoid that string with the pick, at least not all the time. So don't try to rely on that. What you need to do then is learn to use your thumb to come up and mute. But start with your thumb a little bit behind the neck. You'll find it easier. You'll get an easier, more relaxed opposition between the fingers and the thumb, and that's a really important thing. You want your hand loose. You don't want it doing any more work than it absolutely has to get those notes to sound. Okay? So what we're going to start off with then is if you do the A chord with what most people see as the standard fingering, which is 1, 2, and 3 laid across strings 4, 3, and 2 on the 2nd fret. A lot of people have problems playing that because their fingertips are a little too big and the first finger kind of gets shoved down into the 1st fret or maybe onto the fret, which is pretty disastrous. And then the 3rd finger, same thing. If you kind of go the other way, either sort of lose the note quality, because you're on top of the fret, or you're even up here. So not really the happiest solution for every player. So what I like to recommend, and what I use most of the time myself, is this triangle-shaped fingering, where it's the 2nd finger on the 4th string, followed by the 1st finger on the 3rd string, and then the 3rd finger on the 2nd string. Okay, so 2, 1, and 3, okay, all together. And as you can see, it's possible to fit, at least I hope you can see, possible to fit all 3 of your fingertips more closely together in that small space, and pretty much everybody finds that they can get this one together. Now, what's also really cool about this fingering is that when you play the A chord and the D chord together, and that's going to happen a lot because they are in the same key musically. So what's going on then is if I look at the A chord and then play the D chord, you'll notice that my 1st finger did not have to move. You definitely don't want to pick it up and just put it back down in the same place because that's a lot of wasted effort. So play the chord and then go back and forth like this. Now, 2 really important things are happening. First of all, you've literally reduced your workload by 1/3 because you're only having to move 2 fingers instead of 3. And also because this finger stays in place and the note can continue to sound, at least if you want it to. That note's going to sound through the chord change and get you a smoother sound. Okay? Really important stuff. We always want to be able to change chords really smoothly. If you want to chop the rhythm up and do crazy stuff with it, that's cool. But if you cannot change smoothly, you're not going to have those options. Okay? Now, when we play the E chord, we're going to get into a technique that we call common shape. We call this technique common finger because we have a finger that's in common to both chords. But the E chord and then this version of the A chord, which we didn't talk about before, using 2, 3, and 4, that's a pretty cool version when you're going back and forth between an E chord and an A chord. Okay? Now, part of what's happening with this is that the E chord and the A chord have the same relationship to each other that the A chord and the D chord do. They're both in the same key. Now, if you look at the 2nd and 3rd fingers working in the E chord, you'll notice that when I use this fingering of the A chord and go across like this, that I can keep that relationship. They're right next to each other on this pair of strings. I can really actually kind of pick them up and move them like they were one finger, okay? So they have this shape, and the shape belongs to both chords. I just have to move over one string, all right? Now, you don't even have to pick up your 1st finger if you don't want to, because it's going to be overridden by your third finger, which is not going to, or which is going to make the note. Your first finger is no longer having any effect on the sound of the chord. And then I want to make sure that when I'm playing my chords, rather than letting my pinky do what a lot of people's pinkies want to do, which is to duck down under the neck, don't do that. That's a mess. You've got to teach it to relax and to stay out over the strings like this, so that when I want it to go across to the A chord like this, it doesn't have to travel very far or move very far when it releases its string. Okay, so once again, I'm going to get more efficiency. We're always interested in trying to get these jobs done with the least necessary effort. Don't work any harder physically than you have to. It's not going to help. So now, no common notes really with the way that we're handling these chord fingerings, but still, it's a good solution for being able to play those two chords. So remember, acquiring technique on the guitar is a skill-based activity. And so if you understand the steps, because it's a step-by-step process, if you know what the steps are and you understand exactly what you're supposed to do and the order that the steps should be done in, then you're going to have a lot more success, whether you're trying to teach yourself or if you're taking lessons or if you're using YouTube videos like this one, any place you're looking around to kind of get some more guidance on how to play the guitar. So anyway, I hope this stuff will help, and good luck.